What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Black Student Success Podcast, brought to you by Inquire Hire, where we bring you insight and guidance from successful Black professionals. My name is Selvin Quire, and as always, thanks for listening. We definitely appreciate your support. So for today's guest, I believe he has an interesting story within his journey. He has served multiple positions within the U.S. Army over the course of 10 years. And then continued that leadership as a veteran in areas of business operations, college admissions, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're going to get into his story a little bit more and everything that has built up to where he's at today. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Tunde Osilaja to the show. What's going on, man?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here, Selvin. You know, it's been a while. We went to high school together, and it's just really cool to see so many of our classmates from high school doing really cool things. You know, you're doing this podcast, and I really respect it. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your time as well. So first, we always give our guests just the opportunity to really, talk about themselves. I gave you a little bit of introduction, but, the people definitely want to hear more about you. So first, we'll start off with, who is Tunde Osilaja?
Yeah, no, thank you for that kind introduction. First and foremost, I think the thing that's defined me is my race, is being biracial. I'm half. My father was born in Nigeria and my mother was born here. So that's probably been the single most defining thing about, who I am and how I look at the world, sort of this duality. I think I'm a veteran. Most importantly, I'm someone that I just want to exude energy, positive energy. There is this psychological effect called the heliotrope effect. And it's essentially an idea where someone is a positive light and everyone around that person seeks to go towards that light, towards that person. And it's just kind of like a positive energy that person always emanates. That's what I want to do in my life. I don't want to push anyone negatively, or I don't have a negative bone in my body. So at the end of the day, that's who I am.
There you go. And I appreciate that introduction. So, getting into, your service, and first of all, thank you for your service. What motivated you to, want to join the military in the first place?
Yeah, I kind of had a unique story in the sense that, growing up, I was a big history fan. History is my first love in school. And in 2001, Band of Brothers, it's a war epic. It highlights World War II, and I watched it, and I saw sort of the ideas of brotherhood and service and serving something other than yourself. And at that point, I was 8th grade, 9th grade. I really didn't have too big of an understanding of what that meant, but I could see that these people serving in these times, these shared hardships, really forged a relationship that I thought maybe that would be something that I wanted to do. And so when high school came around and I was looking at college, this college called West Point seemed really interesting to me. It was it was a military school where you would go 4 years in the military, and upon graduation, you become an officer in the Army and serve. And that's something that just really appealed to me. And so really at the end of the day, my decision to join the Army was just more about just what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to go to this school. You had to be really active. You had to play sports. You had to serve in leadership positions that appealed to me. But most importantly, because I'm someone that I like to emanate positive energy, I could see that this would be a way that I could sort of satiate that need of connecting with others. And it's allowed me to make some really lasting relationships.
That's what's up. And when you were looking at the schools when you were in high school, did you have any other influences or anybody else to point to when it comes to advice? Like, did you have any family in the military? Did you know anybody? Did you, reach out to anybody when it came to that search process?
Yeah, so I actually have a history of service in my family. Number one, my father, which I mentioned, he's from Nigeria. He's an immigrant. Um, Actually, was sort of an initial spark of motivation. He, at 34 years old, after he was a naturalized citizen, he decided, as a way to pay back sort of disability, this giving him his citizenship. He enlisted in the army and he served for 6 years. And I that was sort of I can remember him sort of taking me and riding in a going on a field day for where his unit would have tanks out and you could sit in the tank and the helicopters and the Humvees. And I just remember being exposed to that and seeing his uniforms when he would come home, his helmet, he'd have his boots. And so it was just something that was kind of always, lingering. I have a grandfather that served in World War II, and although he wasn't around when I was alive, a lot of the narratives in our family stories are driven around his service, and it's just something that it's just always appealed to me.
Nice, nice. And it sounds like with those influences, with that exposure, just being that history buff that you are, that sounds like it had an influence on the specific branch that you chose. Now, did you look at any other branches, when reviewing the military options, or was it like Army, that's what I want to go with?
Yeah, I did, and as a army recruit, as a recruiter that recruited from West Point, this was always my sales pitch. But this was explained to me when I was making that decision. If you want to go into the Air Force, you fly planes. At the end of the day, you're devoted to the aircraft. You're devoted to maintaining the aircraft. In the Navy, at the end of the day, the Navy is about ships. You're devoted to maintaining the ship, so the ship can take you places. You can fly off a plane, with an aircraft carrier. In the Army is tasked to do with so much. So it's not about a specific, tactical skill. It's more about how to work with people, because you could be deployed to Hurricane Katrina. You could be deployed overseas. To fight in a war. Like, there's so many different things that you can do that it's not necessarily about the skills. It's about the relationships. And so to me, you know, the Army sort of facilitates that a little bit more strongly. And West Point, is considered, out of the three military academies, is considered the one more geared towards leadership development. And so, um, I mean, that's, for me, it was a no brainer. It was Army all day.
Okay. Yeah. And it sounds like it made you more of a well rounded individual, in the sense of, serving your country and then eventually, and we'll talk about this later, as a professional. So let's actually talk about West Point a little bit, because, I mean, many people might not know that there are those extensions of those branches in the forms of universities, as opposed to going through a ROTC program through any other specific school. So what was your experience like at West Point specifically?
Yeah. So just to kind of give a background, if you want to become an officer in the Army, there's three options. You mentioned ROTC. There's also what's called OCS, Officer Candidate School, where an enlisted soldier can move and go to, I think it's like a 3-month course, and then they'll be commissioned. So that's the second way. And then the third way is through a service academy, West Point. And West Point is it's located in New York. It's about maybe an hour north of New York City, and it's got 4,400 students there full time, and they go to school in uniform. You wear uniform to class every day. You're taught by professors that are either military professors, kind of in on a rotation, or full time faculty that are just like living in the West Point area. Um, you know, it's a place where you get graded on. You're essentially trying to develop leaders. So that at the end of the day, when you graduate, you can take a West Point grad, and if they for some chance get asked to go to deploy, and you know they're asked to lead combat troops in combat, they have the ability to do that after the 4 years. That's the goal. And so in order to do that, there's a lot of training that's involved. Academics, I mean, namely, you want to have smart officers, but also you want to have physically fit officers, because you know credibility for a young officer is how physically fit you are. If you show up and you're not in shape because you don't have any experience, you've lost all your credibility. So, sports, physical exercise is something that's stressed. But also the third thing that's stressed is what like the leadership realm, where we specifically, develop your leadership traits. You're sort of given this laboratory to pick different leadership styles that work for you. And the goal is, after 4 years, to solidify a leadership style that you think works best for you, so that you can then employ it in a authentic and meaningful way. Because if you're a leader that's not authentic, then you have no credibility, right? So 4 years, it starts when you're a freshman. Even though you're young and you have no experience, the leadership lessons start there. And so, for an example, at West Point, when you're on the bottom of the totem pole, you have you have duties. You have a lot of bosses, and you have a lot of things that you got to get done. And so one of those duties is every Wednesday night we would have laundry duty. And so that's West Point is cool. They have this plant where every week they do every cadet's laundry, and then they deliver it all in like one day. It's the craziest, I guess, practice and operations. But to get from the big baskets that they come in to the individual rooms, that falls on the plebes, the freshmen. And so what they do is they take about maybe 5 upperclassmen and all of the freshmen. They pack us all into this one room, and they say, all right, I don't care who does this, I need you guys to come out here and ready to deliver laundry in 30 seconds. And so there's a specific order that the laundry has to come out in. That's in ranking order. So you got to start with the company commander, and then you got to go down, and you can't go to more than one room twice. So the company commander and his roommate or her roommate have to go out at once. And so if you come out and you realize there's a screw up, you got to grab it all back and come back. And so it's one of those things that it at a very young age, it teaches you sense of urgency. It teaches you, attention to detail, communication. You're a 19-year-old and you're in this room, and it's hot and it's sweaty, and the floors, there's, dew everywhere. I mean, you're really in the gauntlet, so that by the time you are leading that platoon in Afghanistan, you're not worried about some sergeant yelling at you about laundry. You're doing your thing. And that's the whole point. And that's every step of the way, there's a new leadership challenge for you to sort of push yourself. And so that's really the essence of West Point.
Okay. And it sounds like you really live everything that you do now. And from my experience, from what I've heard about ROTC programs and what I've seen maybe some of my fellow classmates doing, they just really have a strict schedule, obviously around their classes and everything. And, you see them running on campus, things like that. And it sounds like with, West Point and, possibly with the other service schools, you're really living it. You're really, like you said, from day one as a freshman, you have this level of accountability that you have to keep, not only with yourself, but with your fellow classmates. And it sounds like that kind of escalates as you get older, throughout the program.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that I always look at is, because I have most of my friends actually went to Marquette,
Yeah.
And so I really got to live that experience a little bit, and going to the beer can and like the freshman dorm, and I got to see both sides. And a lot of times I'd be back at school, and I'd be like, I'd be getting up, shaving. It's like 6:30 in the morning, and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing this? I've been rained on. I've been snowed on. Um, you know, I, I couldn't have possibly known it at the time, and I'm not nearly this smart, but I really was setting myself up for success. Because to me, you know, and again, I've made my mistakes, but I could have been out getting drunk, and I could have been out, sort of doing the partying life, and I missed a lot of skills in that. But I think ultimately this was sort of laying the groundwork for a successful adulthood. Because now I I I can't sleep in past 7:30. I feel like I'm wasting. I have to get up early. I get up, I meditate. I drink my coffee, I stretch, and that's something that I've been doing since 19. And so that regimented lifestyle is almost kind of been a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad that you pointed out that it was something that you didn't realize that would set you up for being a successful adult and having these different regiments in place that make you feel good and help you be productive. You get to see, like you said, you get to see both sides. When you're visiting friends and things like that, and at one point you're like, man, shoot, did I pick the wrong choice? But you continue through it, you push through, and you remember that purpose of why you actually did it in the first place. And now you can say years later that really helped with everything that you're doing now. So I'm glad that you pointed that out, because I'm sure that there may be students who might even be at that academy or thinking about joining the military and are stressed about that level of discipline that they have to put on themselves and then will be put on them. So to hear you say that, hey, this all paid off, it is really good. I'm sure it's definitely beneficial for our listeners. So I appreciate that. Now I want to get into, the experience of you being in school, specifically the academic side,
Yeah.
and, post graduation, as an officer, as an, active military member, how did those two things, impact each other? How did your academics influence, you being an active member, and then vice versa, that military experience after graduation, how did that coincide with what you learned at school?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question, because I think one of the things that West Point does well is they have a very holistic education. So I took physics, I took chemistry, I took American politics, I took law, I took nuclear engineering. There's a wide swath of stuff that you're learning. And at the time, you might be thinking, why am I learning about the political history of Egypt? Like what, like because you have to. There's every one of the requirements is international relations. Um, what I didn't what I didn't realize at the time, I mean, West Point has been around for a long time, so they know what they're doing. I didn't realize at the time is that this West Point was building this natural curiosity, you know, because now I'm able to relate so many different things to the political whatever in Egypt, or that's a nuclear reaction, or I'm just able to sort of cross reference so many things that it's really cultivated this this natural curiosity of I research. I think researching is one of the critical tasks to being an army officer, and I think it really starts with just learning about a whole bunch of different things. You have to know how to learn information, because again, with being an officer, you're not you're not on you're not on a plane for your entire, you're not learning how to fly something for your entire career. Like a pilot, they'll just learn how to do that and just be a perfect pilot for the army. You might go into one job, do that, and then your next job might be completely different. And here's a perfect example of that. When I first came in, my first job when I graduated from West Point, and I took over as a platoon leader, I was in charge of 30 soldiers, and the the platform, the machines that we were using in my group were essentially tanks. Um, and so I had 4 tanks in my platoon. I had about 30 soldiers, and the first time I'd ever been on this tank, so I had to learn how to. I mean, I got to drive the tank. I got to shoot the tank. I was in command of all 4 tanks, so I had to learn how to position them, and then another thing too with these tanks is they had space for soldiers in the back. So then I had to learn how to position the soldiers in the back so that they can be deployed. And there was a lot of this technical not nonsense, technical knowledge that I had to learn, you know, that I before like right after I got there. And I had to learn like some of these soldiers were, more knowledgeable than me, but I still had to be able to talk the talk in the language. Now flip my next job after that, what wasn't tanks. It was something called what's a mortar, and a mortar is, it's a type of bomb. It's a different type of bomb, but it's basically a totally different type of, completely different type of weapon than a tank. And when I went in there, this is a very specialized unit. All the soldiers in that unit were, because it's specialized, they knew everything from that system in and out. And I had to be in charge of those guys. So that's the burden of an officer is you have to take control of situations where you might not necessarily understand everything, but you just have to be confident. And it starts with researching at West Point and just like making you delve into all these topics that you might not necessarily like understand, but it pays off in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, so it made you really adaptive, when it comes to those different situations that you might not even know, what you're going to be placed into. And do you feel that it prepared you for that that uncertainty, when it came to the different positions that you were in?
Absolutely, because there's something called the fear of the unknown, and the biggest thing that hinders us is that fear. We might be the most perfectly capable, person, but if we don't know how we're going to fare, then we're not going to communicate as strongly, or we're not going to be as efficient. To me, I have no fear of the unknown. I used to, and I used to see what it did to me, and over time it just kind of evaporated, and now I'm at the point where I was having this conversation with with an associate dean, and for me, this was kind of an out of body experience, but this is kind of you know a testament to what you can do when you have no fear and when you're 100% confident in yourself. We were having a town hall, and this associate dean, was excuse me, this there's this sort of thought within within our academic setting that we're a little bit antiquated in sort of what the curriculum is. And so to me, I sort of, in the moment in this town hall, back and forth with this associate dean, I sort of pinpointed the problem in front of everyone and sort of like helped him come to a solution, and it was just like I spat it out, and I stepped back, and people were looking at me like, wow, that was really, and I'm like, that I wasn't even me. That was just like my experience, like I just stepped back. I'm like, that was a summation of all my learnings, all of the things that put me in adverse situations where, I had to overcome a fear. I had to, and you do that over and over and over and over again, it goes away. You get used to it.
And I'm glad that you can recall something like that and really pinpoint it back to everything that you learned and all of those experiences, again, before and after graduation, and putting them together and seeing that those things have been instilled and, and are working in your favor. So that's really dope to hear. Now, when it comes to your perspective, your set of skills, we're looking at the military. We're also looking at your, experience within the diversity, equity, and inclusion realm. We're looking at things that you learned within the college, admission space. how has that shaped your professional goals? I know that you talked about leadership and how West Point really shaped you with that. Now, if you add these different things with the different positions that you've had, post the Army, how has that really shaped, what you want to do, with your professional career?
Yeah. Well, what I'll say is, I feel like it's kind of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we never know how to answer the question. So I think the first point is I'm still figuring that out. I mean, I'm going to a job. I know what I'm doing for the foreseeable future. But um, to that end, uh, I think I just to be a little bit frank, I'm someone that I consider myself a super minority. So I'm half white, I'm half black, but I'm half Nigerian. So it's kind of this weird, you know, I my entire life I've been sort of just this fly on the wall, and I've been kind of a casual observer, but I've also slipped through the cracks a lot, you know, and in that process, in that sort of experience, I've noticed that there are so many people that are so smart, that are so capable, that just if they don't have the opportunity, then they don't have the opportunity to see that they can do, you know. And so for me, it's really painful to be in the place that I'm in and see all of the people that are my counterparts at this place, and then compare those counterparts to my friends or people back home at Evanston that maybe weren't given those opportunities, that didn't have weren't able to see for themselves.
Mhm.
I wasn't the smartest out of my group of friends growing up, not not at all. I not even the most mature, um, and yet somehow I'm fortunate enough to be in this position where, you know, I have a master's, I've gone to a nice school. I've had a lot of experiences. Um, my experience in all these, how it shaped how I view the world is the world is patently unfair. And um, what can we do about that? I want to figure that out. That's my goal. And to me, I think the world needs more empathy. We don't have enough empathy. Um, how do we get more empathy? I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out right now, actually.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of that's how I see the world. That's how I see what I want to do, and hopefully I can make it happen.
Absolutely. I think there are two good things that you pointed out with that. One, one, I believe that it's okay to not have that answer of what do you want to be when you grow up. And I think that's also part of the journey, you figuring those things out and trying out different things and getting into different situations. And that's building your character and building those different skills that you will eventually use someday. Maybe you not know exactly how, but those things will come in handy. And then secondly, the whole identity piece. You said that you're kind of, wrestling with this thing because you have these different aspects of your identity. I'm sure that there's a lot of other, students who have that same type of struggle, especially within high school when you're trying to stay out of the uncoolness or that aura.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to somebody who may be wrestling with some of those identities? Maybe they haven't fully embraced them so that they could actually reach that potential and not have to worry about what everybody else is thinking. What advice would you give to someone who's in that position?
Yeah. Be vulnerable. Um, I think that what does that mean? That that's a hard thing to describe. I think just as a bit of background, I think growing up, particularly men, specifically black men, have a very difficult time being vulnerable because
Absolutely.
um, it's seen as weakness, and it's seen as you're showing a part of you that maybe doesn't have an answer, is not, isn't sure, or doesn't know something, or is sad, or is ashamed, and what I've learned is you have to allow yourself to feel that. you have to go through those feelings in order um to learn and build. So here's an example. um I you know I I went to quick story. I was in this school uh in the army, and it's an important school. When you graduate, you get this cool cloth on your uniform, and it's a big deal. Ranger school, um, but it's also got a high attrition rate and a high failure rate. And so, I went in, and the first time I did that school, I failed, and I could have been mad, and I could have been sad, or just not you know wallowed in my emotions. What I did was I just sort of gave myself time to grieve, and I'm like, all right, what did I do wrong? And I look back, I'm like, I messed that mission up. And the ability to say, ah, I did, that's, you know, I didn't do that, or the ability to say I messed up there, or the ability to say I apologize, or that muscle of vulnerability, continuing to do that over and over, I think is the most important thing when you're shaping your identity, because it allows you to feel yourself, and when you feel yourself, you can then react accordingly. And so for me, I felt myself. I'm like, I messed up. And that sort of builds resiliency. And for me, I don't even look at vulnerability as a bad thing. I look at it as an opportunity to get better. If I can say, I messed up, I know I'm going to get better. If I fail, I know I'm going to get better, because every time I failed, I've gotten better. So I don't necessarily know if that answered your question 100%, but shaping an identity to me is just, you know, it's a blank canvas, and you need to give yourself time to fill that blank canvas, and you need to access your emotions to fill that canvas. And in order to access your emotions, you need to be vulnerable.
There you go. I think that's similar to the saying of owning your own narrative. And once you're able to, take those things that might be viewed as negative, and like you said, turn them into opportunities for you to grow, or for you to even just help somebody else, I think is important. So I'm glad that you pointed that out.
Yeah.
Now let's get into kind of the financial benefits that you've reaped, when it comes to the military. I know we want to make sure that our listeners are, financially aware of the choices that they're making, on top of the fact that those choices are really leading or fulfilling that purpose, whatever that purpose is. So what were those, those benefits like, and we can even talk about, while you were active, and then, as a veteran now, what types of things have you experienced when it comes to that area?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was initially intriguing to me about West Point was it was a fully funded scholarship. And when I went there, that was valued at $250,000. Um, so for me, that was West Point. The ROTC has similar experiences and similar opportunities to have your education paid for. Um, Being in the Army, um, to me, it's really about not having to worry about anything so that you can do your job. And so, as hard as the military is as much hardship as there is, the financial benefits are very good. You know, um, and it's because if you don't have to worry about what's going on at home, if you don't have to worry about your kids going to school, if you don't have to worry about, how you're going to pay these bills, who's going to get the sick dog, like, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. That means you're going to be a better soldier at work. You're going to be a better officer at work. And so, I mean, when I was, I won't get into specifics, but when I was, when I was a young officer, I didn't have any dependents. I didn't, I didn't have any kids. I have a girlfriend. I didn't have any responsibilities, no debt. You know, I was able to then start saving at a very young age, right? So at West Point, they have this really nice career starter loan, which is kind of like a nice little present to, hey, you're getting ready to graduate. Here's a nice loan at a very low interest rate. You're able to then use that to make money, and sort of create a little nest egg for yourself. And, when you're in the culture, the best part of that is you're in the culture where people want to do that. So you're getting information from your buddies, your teachers, I mean, I was an economics major. And so my economics professors, they're telling me all about all these little side hustles that they're doing, and, just ways to make money. When you're in that culture, you know, you start to realize like there's a lot of ways to make money. And it's just really about, you know, um, and this is sort of an offshoot, but I guess going back to my whole point about the military, there you're not worried about money. You're not hurting for benefits because the Army sets us up very well.
Gotcha. Okay. No, and I appreciate that, those details, and then even getting into the fact that it's a culture where people want to help you with those types of things, not only the students but the faculty as well. So, and I'm glad that you pointed out the whole saving aspect, because I think once you, and maybe it was a little bit easier for you because you're in that culture of that, that discipline and everything, that starting to save, which can be really difficult for a lot of people.
Right.
And that was just something that you were like, okay, I can do that. Well, so
and kind of add on to that, there's this, again, with the officer piece, there's this air of like, you need to have, if your finances are in order, their personal life's in order, in-house is good, then you can be a good leader. And so that's sort of the thinking, sort of to round out that answer. That's the mindset. So there's really very much a mindset of like, I need to have my financial stuff in order.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So now, for anybody who is just kind of considering, they're taking all this information, they're hearing your story, your experiences, and maybe they're considering of joining the military, specifically the Army or just any of those branches. Now, whether they have that legacy aspect or not, what type of advice would you give to somebody who's just remotely considering that, that route when it comes to their growth?
Yeah. So number one, the military is not for everyone. And I just happen to have the temperament, the personality that vibed with the military. But I was lucky in that aspect, because I could have very well gotten there and not liked it. And there are people that do that. So I think, understand if this is something, there's a lot of benefits, but there are also a lot of costs. And so with those costs, you have to remember, why are you doing this? Why are you? There's going to be a lot of times where, like I said, you're shaving 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, pondering, why am I doing this? You're getting rained on. I was deployed. I was deployed for 9 months. I was in Iraq. I was working 18 hours a day. There are things that you're going to go through that will make you question, why am I doing this? And if you have a flaky answer to why am I doing this, then anytime you come to those inflection points, it's going to be hard for you, because it'll be an easy way out if you don't have a really solid understanding of why you're doing this. So for me, I knew that I wanted to be a West Pointer, end of the day. And I don't know why. It just, I'm a history guy. Ulysses S. Grant, Dwight Eisenhower, those are, some of my heroes. So to me, that was just like, I want to do this no matter what. So if you're going into the Army, it's okay if it's for education. If you want to go in the Army for an education, that's why I went to the Army. However, you have to understand, if things get hard and you're sort of like, well, is it worth it? Understand, well, why do you want that education? If it's just to get an education, it's going to be hard to continue pushing forward. But if it's to get an education so that you can then set your kids up for success and build a home and blah, blah, do all this stuff, and you can link, joining the Army to those goals, then, you're going to be able to push through those hard points, those Ranger School failures, those shavings in the mornings. You're going to be able to push past all those points. So I would say, know why you're doing this. Know why exactly. What's your why? Why are you doing this? Know that.
Absolutely. The why is always a big thing. Always a big thing. It leads to the purpose, leads back to that moral compass that you have. And, as long as you have that at your foundation, then everything else will kind of keep steady. So I appreciate that. So a couple more questions before we close out. With everything going on, with everything that you've built up to at this point, it's not all daisies. Every day there's going to be those tough days. What do you do to take care of yourself? I know that you mentioned meditating, but what are those things that you implement when it comes to self-care?
So for me, I'm big on routines, and that just honestly it comes from the military. If I find myself, sort of just getting loose or just kind of feeling off sync or out of rhythm, the first thing I do is I get back to my routine. So that starts with 8 hours of sleep. If I don't get 8 hours of sleep, the most important thing I do every day is sleep for 8 hours. To include overworking out, to include overdoing assignments. Like if I'm running late on an assignment, I'm I'm going sleep will get in the way of that, because for me, if I don't sleep, if I don't get that routine, I'm hurting. I'm not being an efficient person. So specifically for now in COVID, a lot of it is indoors, a lot of it is behind a computer screen. I think I'm someone, I just need to break the day up. I have a 90-20 rule. So I try to work for about 90 minutes. And then I sort of give myself a 20-minute break. Um, I'll probably do that maybe 3 times at the most, back to back to back, before I sort of give myself a little break for the rest, for a bit. But, it's really just about, listening to yourself and like what works for you. I need to get up and I need to bounce around a lot. So I have to break my day up a little bit. But some people can just sit and, bang out work for 8 hours. However it works for you is kind of, what I say, you know.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you for that. We definitely want to make sure that folks aren't burning out, because that is real. No matter what you're doing, you can always hear no days off, but you need some type of break in there. So thanks for pointing that out. Now, our last question is a little bit lighthearted, and as mentioned, during this podcast, Tunde and I went to high school, and I believe the closest part that we've crossed paths was probably through music. We were both in some type of choral group at some point. So, what I wanted to know, what are your top three musical performances? And they can come from any type of medium. What if you were to look at some of those things that might have influenced you when it came to singing and anything else, or that you just really enjoy? What are those top three for you?
Oh, top three performances. Well, first, I'd like to note the Stankonia record in the back.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was like it was 20 years. I think it was actually Halloween. 20 years it came out. So I appreciate the notice.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
Top three performances. That's a very interesting. Oh man. So what? So I got one. So I want to say I'm a Luther Vandross fan. You know, we just have the same register. He's his. I can't sing Usher. I can, some people Usher. I can't do that. He's got too high. I can sing Luther.
There you go.
Luther. He sang. It's one of my favorite all time. I watch it all the time. He sang "A House Is Not a Home," and I want to say it was like the NAACP Image Awards in like 1988 or something like that. So it's just a really random sort of deep cut performance, but I'd like be cleaning and singing it, and like it's better than the like studio version. Um, so that's one. Um, I give you albums?
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been really listening to lately is that "B" by Common. You know,
Mm.
and so I didn't even realize that Kanye produced it until a couple years ago. But I think something about that album, and this is the genius of Kanye, is that he's gonna get you to listen to the music no matter what. No matter if you understand what's going on or not, it's just going to be catchy. And so I think a lot of his music is just like, like you're just saying the words. You're just saying the thing, like, because it's a catchy, it's a catchy thing to say. And so looking back on B, the beauty of B is, you really can't enjoy B until you have a little life experience, and you sort of listen back and you're listening to a lot of the stuff that Common's saying, and you're like, yo, this is, your 19-year-old Tunde is not understanding this. 30
Yeah.
day is like, and to me, that's the essence of B. Is just track end to end, cover to cover. There, you can't find a bad song. Like, I can't even know what my I don't know what my favorite song on that album is, because they're just all really good, And so that's that's been one. I'd say my favorite album of all time, though, is Biggie Ready to Die.
There you
Um,
go.
And I mean, I actually, so during quarantine, I messing around on Instagram, but I initiated this, I called it Biggie Madness, or Ready to Die Madness. And I took every song on Ready to Die and I sort of put them in a tournament style competition, and I had people vote on it and different things, and I would talk about the album. But for me, the the album is, I think it's the greatest rap, you know, just project of all time.
Hmm.
The first,
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's just, it's not sophisticated. It's not like super deep. It's not Kendrick. You're not making all these similes and it's just a banger. It's the flow is, it's just unstoppable. And
yeah,
you know, I mean, I listen to it and I still get chills. You know,
yeah, yeah. It definitely came at a very pivotal time when it came to hip hop. So it's definitely up there for me as well. I'll give you two albums and I'll give you a performance. So two, and even just a comment on B. I feel like that project as a whole, you add Kanye's production to it. I think everything just was right. Everything just kind of came together at the right time. It was just the right time for everything. I feel like that's arguably his best album.
yeah,
At least for me, the most memorable. When it came to at least the time that whenever it came out, and
yeah,
my music IQ at that point, I think that was just definitely timeless, and I think that's just going to stand that test of time.
yeah.
Um, but one album that I'll give you Aquemini. So, shout out to Outkast. So I'll give you that one. I feel like that was really at that time where, both of them individually were kind of finding their place, and they still found that chemistry to create that whole project. So that's one. Two, as far as a music project, I would say, you know what? I'm gonna actually give you two performances. So one would be, and it always stands out anytime I see it, but the stoplight scene in The Wiz. If
Mm,
you remember that, where there was the,
I've been
the
watching.
so there was it was basically once they got to Emerald City, right? And so it's just this super big performance of all these dancers. They start off in one color, I believe. I'm not sure the order, but they go through red, they go through yellow, and they go through green. And it's just super elaborate performance. And I've always loved that part of the movie. My third, and this is my dancer bias, but I always felt like the choreography from the Smooth Criminal full, the
Cool.
not the music video, the full like 10-minute bit
Right.
from Moonwalker. That's my all-time favorite. Just that whole sequence. As soon as he walks in, everybody's about to shoot him, but then he flips a quarter, and then the whole thing gets going. That's just how that all played out is just my all-time favorite. So the way that they use that entire space was just phenomenal to me. So those are my three that I'll give to you.
And it's interesting you talk about Mike, because like I can't, I was watching this, I don't know this documentary, but they were like, you know they would be filming for, I think it was actually, they're talking about the Thriller music video, And so the full big one, the long one. And they're like, yeah, these professional dancers come from all over the world and to train, Juilliard, American Ballet, blah, 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 come here and they're just stretching. And then here comes White just shows up and just flexes like he's been doing it. Like, like no, it has no training, nothing, and that's the genius of, that's the genius of him. He's just
absolute genius. Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, man, Tunde, this has been great. I truly appreciate your time. Any last words that you want to give to our listeners? You want to tell them where they can find you? I'm gonna give you the floor for that.
yeah. So you can just find me on LinkedIn. I'm Tunde Osilaja. It's TundeOsilaja. I'm bald, so you can find the guy with no hair. Yeah, I'm just reach out. I'm very passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion. Um, I'm also passionate about helping high school students go to college, and also young business professionals that want to go on to get their masters, whether that's business school, law school, whatever the case. I'm very passionate about that. So if anyone has any questions, please definitely shoot me a note on LinkedIn.
There you go. All right. Well, again, Tunde, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything, your time. Thank you to all the listeners out there. Just be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the podcast. We're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, and all the small streaming services in between. We're on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then you can check out our website, inquirehire.com. We specialize in the college consulting services. So if you had any type of a concern or help that you need when it comes to looking for school or trying to figure out the whole application process and everything in between, we would definitely love to help you. Just definitely reach out to us. You can also email us at contact@inquirehire.com. So until next time, thanks again and peace to you.